Hello, welcome everyone. As everyone is coming in, welcome in this session. We will let people come in from the waiting room and start in a few seconds. All right, let's get started. Already in talking about coffee and changing volatility, we've had to navigate the Nicaraguan traffic as Merling is just joining our office now and will be with us shortly from road issues. Really happy to have many of you with us today, joining from all over. The session is recorded and will be made available afterwards for many of you joining now, or if you would like to access this after the session is closed. Before I welcome you and present you the session and the speakers today, I want to just do a few housekeeping. If you're familiar with Zoom webinar platforms, you would know to hit the little globe or the little interpretation globe at the bottom. It might also be within a 3-dot that says more, where you click to find interpretation. The session will be in Spanish and English, and so you could choose from Spanish, English, or French as your first language. We'll be navigating, mostly speaking in English and Spanish, so if you don't speak either of those languages, we welcome you to choose the interpretation. Si no hablan inglés, pueden tocar el botón de interpretación abajo de la pantalla. Es como un globo que dice interpretación o 3 puntitos donde pueden escoger español. Si vous parlez français et vous voulez écouter la session en français, appuyez sur le petit globe d'interprétation en bas ou un petit icône de 3 petits points qui dit plus ou more pour voir l'onglet interprétation et choisir français. La session sera en espagnol et en anglais. Bienvenidos a todos. If you're joining us today, you probably touch coffee in one way or another in your life. If not, as a bare minimum, as a coffee drinker, as I am already on my 3rd cup today. I'm Julie Francoeur. I'm the CEO of Fairtrade Canada and also support as a CEO sponsor for Fairtrade Coffee globally. I sit in Ottawa today in Canada, and this is where I'll be guiding you through today's session. If you're joining today, chances are that you're quite familiar with a lot of what I'll be saying in the next 2 minutes. The global coffee industry is experiencing unprecedented volatility. Rising prices, financial instability, climate disruptions are making it increasingly difficult for farmers, for cooperatives, and businesses to maintain a stable and sustainable supply chain. Access to financing has become a critical challenge. High interest rates, liquidity constraints, limiting cooperatives' ability to even purchase the coffee from their farmers, while climate change continues to make productivity decline. Emerging legislation like EUDR or changes in European organic standards, for example, also continue to add cost and implementation difficulties for farmers. And as if that wasn't enough, then you can add a good dose of tariffs and economic instability to the mix. So in this session, we'll try to tackle some of those challenges and discuss the underground reality for coffee farmers. We'll explore how Fairtrade's approach can strengthen the supply chain, make it more resilient, especially through strong democratic cooperatives that can foster stability and reliable partnerships. I want to introduce you to our panelists today, hopefully as Merling is connecting from her office as she has just arrived. I'll introduce Paulo Ferreira, who is the commercial manager of coffee for CLAC, the Caribbean and Latin American producer network of Fairtrade. He is joining us from Brazil. Before being in this role, Paulo was also the commercial lead and sales manager of coffee cooperatives in Brazil and has been involved in coffee since he was 8 years old on his family farm, and he's still coffee farming today. Merling Preza, who will join us very soon, is a prominent leader in the coffee industry. She's been a pioneering Nicaraguan leader and a global advocate for fairness in trade and gender equity in agriculture. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Merling. She co-founded PRODECOOP in 1993 and continues to serve as their general manager. Under her leadership, PRODECOOP has grown to represent 38 base cooperatives and over 2,600 coffee farming families in northern Nicaragua. She is also the co-founder of Café Nica, a national network of coffee cooperatives. Hey, welcome, Merling. Good to have you. I was just introducing you. Fantastic. And she's been a key figure in advancing women's access to land, leadership roles, and economic opportunities. Internationally, she's held prominent roles in coffee. Currently, she's on the board of CLAC, the Latin American network of Fairtrade farmers in Latin America and the Caribbean. And she's the president of their coffee network, the Red Café. She also sits on the board of Pachamama Coffee. She has more than 30 years of experience in the coffee industry and is also a coffee farmer herself. So welcome, Merling and Paulo. Without waiting more, I want us to jump directly into understanding how the current reality of the market is impacting farmers in Nicaragua, but all over Latin America and globally, as you've been in discussions, Merling, with many of the producers that we work with and that you work with directly. The market has been anything but predictable. Can you explain to us a little bit how these fluctuations have been playing out for coffee farmers and how it's impacting coffee farmer communities?
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good day. I thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you all this relevant topic and situation for producers right now. This is quite relevant for us producers because we are being directly targeted and affected in different ways. At production level, we cannot define the income, and costs have risen as a result of the increase in labor hand, which is more expensive for the workers on the farms. Now they see networks, the internet, the price, and think that the coffee grower, the producer, gets that price, and so they are demanding higher retribution, and also transportation and inputs have also increased costs. And also climate change has affected us. There's less production in some areas. The producers' organizations are now vulnerable because the high and volatile price does not allow us to determine a price for the collection of coffee from producers. We cannot determine the real cost because we don't know how we are going to do this collection. Sometimes we have the collection and then the price goes up or drops like $10 or more at any given moment. So we don't know how to determine the price. And also, we have other types of risks because our buyers, our importers, do not want to sign contracts because they also have market risks to face, so they don't buy in advance. And this means that us coffee growers need to do the collection every day because many times we cannot set a price because we don't have a final contract. And also, things worsen when the harvest comes all at once. And because of climate change, the harvest times vary. So we have peaks where we have more coffee and we cannot define the price. And this can generate a lot of losses in our organizations. And even some may go bankrupt because of this. And although the prices might be high at the stock exchange, well, the grower has so much pressure to sell. So there's a demand with very low spreads for coffee from different countries in the region. And we hadn't been able to sell our coffee before the harvest began, and we had contracted everything before. For example, example, in 2024, we have positive differentials around 10 or even up to 23 cents per pound. However, for the 2024-2025 harvest, we started with a -5 spread, and then we reached up to -20. And we've recovered this because the price dropped. But at the time we were doing the harvesting and the collection, the differential was quite high. So we were not very happy because we weren't getting the price of the stock. They had calculated, but they did not understand the spread or the differential, the spread price. And despite the fact that we have support with funding and training and compliance with the certification, they're supporting us in that, in looking better markets for our coffee. And, we managed collective risk in the collection, and that's how we manage the risk, getting better information, price monitoring, and strengthening long-term relationships with our buyers. That was a plus. Sometimes we had some advance payments during the harvest or some advance payments during the harvest. And also capital, with high prices has the requirements of, with the different credit lines, and that has higher costs. I can give you an example. The cost for coffee container in 2022, 2023 was around $74,000. That is to say, to get the coffee from the producer. But today is over 100,000 or even up to 120,000 to get the coffee, to collect the coffee without the processing costs, logistics, transportation, and funding, etc. And also the importance of fair trade for us and the support for resilience, especially for the small coffee growers, because the fair trade coffee provides support to the coffee growers, and they have the fair trade support, and minimum prices are also useful for reference. However, despite the market price, they are a reference, and they allow us to invest in commodities, and they allow us also to invest in sustainability of our land and different social programs. Also, from the coffee growers networks, we get support in good agricultural practices to be more resilient and to meet market requirements. There are a lot of challenges in addition to price volatility. Volatility is just one of the challenges we face, but we also need to comply with international standards that also go hand in hand with the price volatility. And also we have requirement to adapt to these standards where the cooperatives and the producers must invest. Our network, our CLAC producers support us. In the case of the market, we also have market experts who are supporting us by means of different communication means such as WhatsApp and others. And we have received training for the market and also to manage risk, financial risk especially. We have developed different strategies to be able to manage the market. In this cycle, for example, we worked with the stock exchange, and that required more resources. So we had to set up different strategies that allow us to use these resources. And also we have a close relationship with our buyers, so we have different ways to fund them. We have sales stimulated by open prices, and we set the price as the coffee comes in so that we can protect internally protect ourselves. But we have managed this because we had the support of the Fairtrade coffee growers networks.
One question on this, we've been hearing a lot about, and this is not just for coffee cooperatives, I think it's for everybody in the chain, whether it's traders and roasters, everyone else, the issue of financing, of accessing finance, and whether it's a credit line or for cash flow of the cooperatives. How is access to financing affecting the ability of co-ops to purchase coffee from their farmers? What are you seeing is happening currently in the ability of cooperatives to access finance, and how are you navigating that?
Well, one of the main problems we have with high prices has to do with funding and the resources to collect the coffee. High prices leads us to look for more capital for collection, and the amount of coffee that is collected depends on the financial resources that we get through the cooperative, whether it's in the advancement of payments or during the harvest or the coffee. Also, the management with the high prices and the requirements of different resources, it's much higher, but with the different credit lines that we get, and the cost is also higher. So what you were just saying, well, it's really hard to collect coffee. The issue with the volatility is that you're never sure of the price for collection and the money that you will need to collect the coffee. So we have to have good cash flow so that our funders have trust in us and they provide the resources that we need. Also, we need to have contracts signed so that we can have access to funding. So, it's a vicious circle. If I don't have the contracts, I cannot get the funding. A lot of cooperatives were not able to get the resources on time because they didn't have the contracts to back up their credits. And this is really difficult because you cannot sell everything that you have planned to sell because you don't know whether you're going to get it. So this is the vicious cycle I mentioned. And also some issues have to do with the increase of interest rates at a local level. I mean, it's really hard to get the funding, but also because of this fear of risk, local banks have increased their interest rates. And of course, we have the issue of logistics, which makes the funding even more costly. In our case, we had some negotiations. We tried to be proactive. First, we requested the total credit line, higher resources so that we were able to collect the projected or planned volumes. Then we started negotiating with our funders so that we could have some of our contracts without the funding so that we could start the collection. Also part of our working capital and some collaterals for the local market. And that's how, and also we managed to do this as a cooperative because of fair trade, because the pre-funding model with the contracts, which are, they're also funding the non-fair trade contracts as well. But this started through fair trade, and the support that the funders have because of fair trade, we have the premiums, and that, provides a safety net to the buyer.
I want to pass to Paulo. What else are you hearing about these liquidity challenges for coffee farming communities and especially co-ops or especially co-ops that export by themselves or those who rely on exporters? And can you speak a little bit about what you see as the kind of structural difficulties that cooperatives have to navigate in a high-risk context, especially in access to liquidity and ability to buy and fixed contracts? And what else are you hearing from the cooperatives that you work with?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here sharing a little bit about the the scenario from the cooperatives for the fair trade cooperatives in Latin America. Currently, the market liquidity is one of the main challenges for the value chain in coffee, not only coffee, in other commodities as well. But that generates a lot of difficulties for the cooperatives, for the exporters, for everyone in the coffee chain. And this problem has many roots, I would say. As Merling have mentioned, many of them, like the liquidity, the pre-financing access, the costs, the high cost of coffee to buy, the high prices. For example, a trader before to buy one lot of coffee would need like $100,000. Right now, it need almost $200,000. So it's much more money that you need to buy one lot of coffee, and with limited access to financing, to resources to buy it. Other question that has getting this even worse is the high volatility in the market. So many players that use to manage their risk in the stock exchange, they would need to move some cash to cover guarantee margins or price adjustment, daily price adjustments. So it's more money going to the futures than to the physical trade. So that also generates less business flow in the physical market, generating this lack of liquidity. And this generates a lot of challenge for the cooperatives, for the producers. Many times they are willing to sell their coffee to take advantage of the good price that they are receiving. Sometimes they need to cover some costs that they already had. And many times they are not able to do that because there's no buyer to buy this coffee. And this, for the cooperatives, many times generates a lot of competition with other traders, local traders, or the local coyotes that sometimes are able to pay sometimes a lower price, but they are able to pay it faster or to do business with the producers. So sometimes it brings some challenge in this kind of competitive scenario for the cooperatives internally, and also put pressure in the internal price. As Merling said, the differentials many times they are lower because the producers, the cooperative, they need to generate business, they need liquidity to access financing sometimes. So sometimes the offerings starts to go at lower price. So many times we see this price at the New York, but it's a virtual price. It's not the real price that arrives to the producers, to the cooperatives, to this liquidity challenge that brings this scenario of high prices.
Can you explain a bit more? I mean, maybe just a note for everyone too. You can put. We probably won't have time to cover all questions asked, but if you do have some, we'll try to integrate some of them. So there is a Q&A box at the bottom, and you can integrate them, and we'll monitor them through the session. On this point, both Merling and Paulo, you've spoken about some of the increased costs or fluctuation of the costs that the producers are facing. It's hard sometimes for people on the other side of the chain, that either the final roasters or importers or coffee shop owners, to understand how at a market of 350 or 370 this morning, I've heard a few times a reflection, but surely by now, producers are covering their costs and everything is fine. So it's not necessarily understanding that these cost and sure, it is better and higher prices can help. And they have helped in some situations, but what we've seen is also a huge increase in costs. So can you explain a little bit more this dynamic between what the differentials and what the actual price that producers and cooperatives manage to really receive versus the costs that they're facing currently? Maybe I'll send it to you, Paulo, and then I'll come back to Merling after with another topic.
In general, when we have high prices, we always have to think why the prices are so high. Many times it's because of lack of production. It's not because of huge demand. Most part of the time it is because the producers are suffering getting half of the productives that they are able to do. And that means that they need to invest even more to guarantee some productivity because the climate change, because other problems that are affecting. So they are producing less and having more costs. So the cost is not only
So the actual revenue is the same, yeah.
Exactly. So that generates a distortion in the market in the scenario. So many people think that producers are receiving really good price. Okay, the prices are really high historically. Many producers are like happy, but many of them, they are not aware about their costs and about the impacts for the future of these scenarios. So we are working to raise this awareness and so they understand the investments that they need to do to keep resilience. And of course, as Merling said, many costs also increase due to the high prices, like labor costs is one factor. For example, in Brazil right now, we are about to start the crop here. And the people that need to hire labor to do the crop, to do the harvest, they are already hearing that the workers will increase their cost by almost 100%.
Wow.
So it's a huge increment, and the producers do not have the guarantee that they will sell their coffee at 350 when they have the coffee done. So these are some points that brings even more challenge and unpredictable scenarios for the production.
Yeah. Which brings me to another part that we've seen that actually is one of the support function that cooperatives can play in being more resilient and facing all that. Because if you're a coffee farmer or a small business, the power of the collective is definitely something we've seen. You support a lot of cooperatives in your work. Globally, we have like over 600 Fairtrade cooperatives in coffee, and the majority of them being in Latin America and the Caribbean. So what do you see differentiates a cooperative that can navigate or manages to navigate this volatility with one that is weaker and cannot manage this current context? And what have you been able to do as the CLAC field team to strengthen cooperatives? Now I'll put that to Paulo, and then maybe Merling, if you can complement after.
Yeah, the main difference between cooperatives that are like successful ones are the ones that were able to develop long-term partnerships with their buyers, also with their members, with their producers. They were able to build up confidence among their members, among their producers, and there is a commitment of the producers with the cooperatives. Even when the cooperatives is facing some challenge, some crisis, I would say, the farmers, they help to support the cooperatives. They keep committed with the cooperatives, with the organizations to help them to tackle all the problems and to face the challenge. And right now we are seeing a lot of cooperatives that are being able to navigate at these chains, at this challenge, due to this commitment that they have from their members. For example, PRODECOOP is one example of this. They have a really good committed members, and it supports them. They have the confidence, and they are able to build up this confidence at the other side of the supply chain. So you can see the work that these cooperatives are doing and the impact that they are generating at their members, and this brings us to the market, and they are more able to build long-term relationship, this trustable chains, and help them to navigate, and many times to share the risks, to share the challenge throughout the whole supply chain. So it's not only the challenge or the problems are not charting only one point of the supply chain, but like it's spread out throughout supply chain, and it helps to evolve and to develop on this.
I feel like it's been decades that Fairtrade has worked with co-ops on price risk management and strengthening the ability of co-ops. Merling, from your side, what practices or what investments have helped PRODECOOP to remain stable through these recent shocks? And what kind of long-term thinking do you think is required for co-op when there's such volatility like this? What have you been able to do on your side to support that as a co-op, or what do you see other co-ops around you are able to do?
Yo creo que hay un trabajo antes.
Well, I think that there's a previous work, that is Fairtrade's work that have generated trust, improved productivity on the fields. Although we are facing climate change, we are more resilient at producer level because of all the work you've done through the cooperatives. We've invested in our social premium, also production investments, social and environmental programs within the communication, and also infrastructure that has allowed us to generate changes. We are now navigating two things. One thing in the short term, how to solve the issue of volatility and funding, and the strategies in the long run, how we're going to move forward. In the short term, well, we need funding. We need to manage our funding, and that's essential. Different proposals to our internal and local funders, as I said before, trying to adapt to a different model and the higher resources, but we are trying to be pro-positive with our funders, different sales strategies that allow us to somehow have protection, and also working capital. More than ever, in order to have working capital, we need this support. And in the long-term strategy, well, we need investment in infrastructure and equipment that allows us to have a more efficient processing. As Paulo said, the issue of labor, this is not only in Brazil, but in the region. This is a result of migration, and this has led us to be more efficient and more competitive. And this requires investment in infrastructure. Mechanical drying or machine drying is essential because of climate change. We cannot have sun drying because, climate has changed and we don't have so many hours of sun, so we need the machine drying now. And also, as I said, we need efficient management. We need to strengthen our long-term relationship with our buyers. We all have to face risks, and we all need to work in order to strengthen these long-term relationships with our buyers. And this also requires efficient and timely communication with our customers, because many times the relationship is strained because of lack of communication or poor follow-up. So I think it's also important to consider that within our market. And of course, the buyers, the high prices puts a lot of pressures and to look for cheaper coffee prices or cheaper coffee. So we need to try to generate a good business model that generates added value for the entire supply chain. And that is why our sales strategy goes hand in hand with increasing our fair trade sales with a long-term relationship. And of course, we cannot do it on our own. And this requires the support of the fair trade system through our network. And in the case of the CLAC, of CLAC. We need to train. We've had a lot of support in the management of commercial and financial risk, and this has been a key to strengthening our processes. The commercial and communication teams also supports us at different levels, engagement in different fairs, from the preparation of how to participate, how to prepare the communication, supports in the meetings with our clients. And this allows us to be competitive organizations, and they also provide information and also exchange amongst organizations. You also learn a lot from that. We need to invest in the market, we need to invest in infrastructure and the people as well.
Yeah, these are all things that you've been building for the long term. And I think this is pieces that we're now seeing the resilience of co-ops that have had strong leadership and strong governance through time. You've mentioned a few times, both Paulo and Merling, the impact of climate change, and both on productivity, but also on extra challenges and extra needs for investments, like no longer being able to dry coffee in the sun. Can you explain a little bit more, Merling, how is climate change altering not just productivity, but also quality? And what shifts are you seeing already, and what shifts do you think will come for production of coffee in Central America due to climate change?
Well, we are seeing this as we speak. We have smaller productions in many countries, issues with compliance because of lack of coffee, and climate change has affected our coffee plantations in different ways, and depending on the climate variability, our production is affected. So if there's a lot of rain, the production will drop, and we need to apply more inputs to keep up our plantation. And if there's drought, the coffee doesn't flourish, and then there's also a drop in production. Then we have a lot of pests spread, like coffee pests, and this reduces top quality coffee. And then we have higher costs and less production, higher costs to keep our plantation, and this generates less production, and this is a result of climate change. Coffee production is like the production of perishable products. You have to be paying attention to whether it rains or not, so that to apply the necessary inputs, and this includes, higher costs, and there's also a visible drop in the top quality production. So, that's less income. We want to have top quality products, but sometimes you cannot manage that, and that's why we have a reduction in volume in coffee in the region. Other things that have affected us are the harvest cycles. In our organization, the harvest comes at around from October, the end of February at the latest. And that's how we had our education system planned, so that they can work with their parents. But now we start at the end of October, and we finish at the beginning or the end of April. So it's a longer cycle for the harvest and the collection. And this increases costs because we have even, different cycles, and this generates a drop in the quality, or affects the quality and the costs. And, this is, as a result of this, we have had to redefine our strategy for our support to producers. And so we've created this unit of sustainable production with resilience to climate change. And this is a support in both ways, in productivity and resilience to climate change. Our results with fair trade producers is that our fair trade premium, we invest in productivity at farming level and training in good practices, which is a result of the support from the producers' networks, and these are part of our standards as well. We also have exchanges to learn from each other on different resistant varieties, organic products that we can use also. And in general terms, support on these issues helps us to be more resilient. The organization, our network of producers, and fair trade are necessary to have more resilient coffee growers and producers. And also, we need to implement different policies that will allow us to continue in the coffee growing sector. You cannot do it from overnight. So we have to focus on different policies like child labor, gender and inclusion policies. We're also focusing on youths, and also we have the support of the technological changes that ensures the long-lasting coffee growers into the following generations.
As you've said, I think the ability of training and capacity building on this, but also we've seen many cooperatives invest the fair trade premium in managing, either investing in their climate change or climate mitigation plans, and finding different ways to create that approach. Paulo, obviously adapting to climate disruption requires a lot of financial and logistical investment. It takes time and it's expensive. What kind of supports do you think are helpful in enabling producers to do that, to make those long-term shifts and play the long game in terms of climate adaptation? And how have you seen CLAC and Fairtrade be able to support cooperatives in doing that?
Yeah, currently at the farm level, this is the main
issue.
The main issue and the key point to guarantee the survival of the production. This adaptation, as you mentioned, require a lot of investment in terms of money, but also in terms of time of the producers. It's more work to adapt the practices, to adapt the management. So it's a lot of time that they have to spend on that. And we have seen that the producers that has more access to knowledge, to technical assistance, to agronomical technical assistance, they are able to adapt themselves quickly than the ones that do not have that. The ones they have to figure out how to do, and the ones that have this access to this kind of services are able to do it quickly. And many times this means their survival in the productions. And unfortunately, in many countries in Latin America, this kind of service is really expensive, or sometimes doesn't exist in some regions, in some countries. And we have seen that the fair trade organizations, the fair trade producers organizations, many of them, almost 100% of them, invest their fair trade premium in bring this kind of service, this kind of knowledge to the producers. And this generates this knowledge and help them to adapt quickly, providing this kind of services that they would not be able to have if they were not fair trade. So this helps them to understand the change, to understand how to manage this change, and to define better strategies, included financing strategy. For example, if a producer wants to adapt for a change, for a climate change, or for a disease that is more common, they will need to renew their plot, for example, for a new variety. This takes time, this needs a lot of money, and sometimes 3 to 4 years without production. So besides the management, the agriculture practices, they also need to plan their financing to be able to do these changes, to be able to adapt them to this. So this kind of services and trainings helps them to navigate and to understand and to define the best strategies. And at CLAC level and also other producers networks, we have a lot of, as Merling said, we have in CLAC this sustainable production and resilient unity that's only for training agronomists and technical assistants at the cooperatives, to support them, to give them the knowledge, to transfer this knowledge to the producers, and to help them to adapt on this. Other point that we see a lot of support of the fair trade and the fair trade cooperatives to the producers is also in terms of research. So what's the best varietal? What's the best practices? Many countries, we do not have research companies or government support for research. So the cooperatives, they are doing this using the fair trade premium, using the support of the producers network, the fair trade producers network, to develop this knowledge and to spread this knowledge throughout the producers to guarantee their survival and their resilience, and that they will be able to stay producing coffee for many, many years. Another key point that I think, at least in CLAC, we work a lot, and many cooperatives also work a lot, is in the next generations, like to capacitate the young people to be adapted and to understand that the coffee can be a good business, that they could be able to keep producing coffee for many, many years. And also to raise this awareness on them that they need to be adaptive and to bring them the right knowledge, the right information to be able to do so. So I think that these are the key points that Fairtrade is supporting the producers in this adaptation.
And on the line with us, we have quite a few roasters, importers, people in different parts of the supply chain. And I see one of the questions, and that's sort of where I was going as well, on what do we think, what can companies and buyers and other actors in the chain do? What should they be looking for in their sourcing partnerships to help that resilience and to support that? So they're also struggling to navigate the current context. It's really hard for importers, for roasters to navigate the uncertainties. Hearing what you're presenting from the realities on the ground, what do you think you're hoping that they could be able to do? So Merling, from your view, what do you think companies can be doing to support this resilience and to tackle this?
Son años difíciles para todos, como mencionaba.
Well, it's really hard for everyone, and crises always test our long-term partnerships with our buyers. We all understand that we have to face specific risks in the market. We need to work together. We think that we need to work on a win-win scheme. And as much as we continue working on fair trade, and we together jointly decide how we can improve our relationship and increase our sales. Fair trade sales imply investment in our land, in climate change, in the improvement on the quality of lives of our families. We understand that it's a two-way street. We must honor our commitments. We have contracts, and we need to honor our contracts so that our buyers trust us. We need to do our work on the side of the buyers. Likewise, they must buy our fair trade products. They need to negotiate, but it should be on a win-win basis for the cooperative and for the buyers. So in this long-term relationship, we've seen this year, buyers that have stayed with us despite the difficulties, and they haven't gone to others and buy cheaper coffee. They have worked with us to fix prices, the timing, so that nobody loses. So in this brainstorming, we can find out different ways to keep on working. And we've had other challenges beyond volatility, such as, for example, logistics, that sometimes is not dependent on us. So sometimes the buyer collaborate. They understand that it's not just our responsibility. Also, the issue of the timely payments so that cooperatives can in turn pay their funders, because late payments make the cooperatives be late in paying their own dues. So we need to work together. We need to avoid defaulting, and the buyers should also help us and cooperate with us.
Yeah, I think this year is the first time I've heard of, there's always sometimes a fear in different situations from buyers that producers might have a default or that they might not be able to deliver. For the first time this year, I've heard cooperatives worry that their buyers will default on payment. So it's clearly an uncertainty along the whole chain. And I think producers are very aware of that. And as you say, there's nothing better than direct, real, honest conversations with your producers and sitting down to find and negotiate something that works. Paulo, from your side, how do you make meaningful partnerships in that context? What would you want to ask, or what is the advice and wish you have from the rest of the supply chain?
Yeah. Today, I think that the most valuable thing for business is to have trustable and stable supply chains. Right now, this is the biggest strategic advantage that a company may have, to have a trustable and stable supply chain. The lot of challenges that we have mentioned. So first, I think that it's important to the companies. As Merling said, the producers are already aware about this importance, and they are willing to build up and to develop these relationships, these long-term relationships, and transparency throughout the chain to build up this trustable supply chain with their partners. And they need that as well to guarantee their survival at the business, as Merling mentioned. When you have a good partner that are not willing to buy from another because of the price, but it's willing to support and develop and to tackle the problems and go ahead with the partnership, that's the most important thing. So the companies, the traders, the roasters, the supermarkets, I think that one key point for them is to understand their supply chain. Even they are not buying directly from a cooperative, from a producers, but it's important to understand who are at their supply chain, how many people are involved, how many companies, what are the risks, what are the opportunities that may have at their supply chain. I have seen many companies, included many producers, many cooperatives, many exporters, that do not know more than the first point of the supply chain. So they are not able to see strategically in medium term and long term what could be the problems that they may have in the future, or what are the opportunities that they are not taking advantage right now. So I think that the key point is to understand, and even if you are not buying directly at the end, you understand, you have relationship, you have information, and you have this long-term relationship view to build up the confidence, the trust throughout the whole supply chain, to guarantee this stable supply chain for the future. And if any problem arises, you have the confidence to talk to the people to find the solution together. So I think that's the main point, like to know well your supply chain and try to develop the relationship throughout the whole supply chain. And also it helps, of course, to communicate with the producers, to understand the needs of the producers, and also at the consumer side, to understand the needs of the consumers, and also to communicate all the work that you are doing and all the impact that you are generating to the consumers as well. So it becomes like included a marketing and a competitive advantage for the companies as well.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, the consumer, the millions of coffee drinkers, clearly we're seeing this in multiple countries. As the prices have been rising, a lot of roasters and brands have to pass on that cost to consumers. And as the cost of coffee increases, and the cost of many other goods, especially with tariffs sitting here in Canada and all these discussions, we're definitely seeing consumers that are more and more aware of the cost of their food. What is the best thing that we can pass as a message to consumers and coffee drinkers about the reality now, and why their coffee will be more expensive probably in the coming years? I don't know if Merling or Paulo, what is one thing, Merling, that you wish we could pass on to people who drink coffee everywhere?
Sí. Por supuesto.
Yes, of course.
Pensamos
We
que
think that,
uno de nuestros
we have a lot of
trabajar
optimism,
en
and this
en que
optimism,
viene principalmente
despite
a
all
pesar
of
de las
the
situaciones
adverse
adversas,
situations, well,
viene
our
de, en
optimism
nuestro
comes
caso, de las
from
3.400
the
familias que
producers and
viven del
the
café.
3,400
Nosotros
families
tenemos
that are living
3.400
from coffee.
familias
These are the small
directamente que
coffee
viven del café, que
growers,
son nuestras familias de pequeños
almost
productores, que son más de
16,000
16,000
people
personas,
who
que están
are
en áreas que no vamos
areas
a
that will
cambiar,
not
como
change
mencionaba
because
antes,
that's their
ni de su
livelihood.
modo
And
de
we will
vida.
continue to
Es
grow and
decir, vamos a
produce
seguir produciendo
coffee.
café.
On the other
Y por
hand,
otro lado,
we
nos
want to
anima a seguir trabajando
work for
por esos
those
consumidores
consumers that are
conscientes
aware
de
that the
que la
best
mejor
way to
forma de
go is to
vivir
buy
es
sustainable products.
comprando productos
We
sostenibles.
know that if these buyers
Sabemos que
do
si
not
estos
buy our
compradores
sustainable
no
products, we
compran
won't be able to
productos
sell.
sostenibles, nosotros no
They
vamos a
are
poder vender
the
nuestro
most
café.
important
Ellos
player
son
within
el
our
actor más
chain. They
importante en nuestra cadena.
have
Que ellos
to
puedan consumir
consume our
nuestros
products, but
productos que
these
tienen
products
grandes
have to
retos como el
face
cambio
challenges
climático,
such
grandes
as
retos como
feeding the
el alimentar
families
día a
that
día
grow
a
the
las
coffee and
familias
also
que viven
face
del
climate
café.
change. So
Y
that
que
cup
ese
of coffee
consumo
they
que
drink every
realizan, esa
day
taza de café que compran cada día,
improves the
llega
lives of
a mejorar la
thousands of
vida
families
de
who
miles y
grow
miles de
from
familias
the
e
coffee
individuos.
growing industry. And
Nuestro
also
reto es que a
consumers
pesar de
have
los
to
desafíos, porque
face
también el consumidor
challenges,
tiene desafíos
inflation,
con la
tariffs,
inflación, con los
world
cambios a nivel
changes.
mundial,
So
pero
remember
que
that
recuerden que en
every
cada
cup of
taza de café
coffee is
hay
feeding
familias que
families that
viven
live
de esa
from
taza de
that.
café.
That's always something that I try to think of every time I drink a cup of coffee is how many hands had to touch this product before I could enjoy it. This is coming to an end, and there's many other questions and discussions. This could have been a whole afternoon discussion or full day session. We will take some of those questions and follow-ups and try to tackle them through responses and emails that will go out to you. The recordings will be made available as well, so you can reach out to us in the follow-up emails that you will get with the links. We will be uploading this. And we will try to continue discussions globally, and you can go on the Fairtrade websites to find more information about this. We're also recently started a cyclical review of the coffee price and premium. So Fairtrade International is committed to doing this in a cyclical timeline now. And so this will be in consultation with producers and roasters throughout this year. So we really hope that you'll be involved and encourage you to participate in our consultation this year so that we can make the best informed decision possible. I want to thank you, Merling, for the time to share what you're hearing and what you're seeing on the ground. Paulo, to share the stories from many of the producers that you support every day. And thank you to everyone who listened and took the time with us. It's really appreciated. And hopefully you've learned something or heard it from a different perspective than what you've been hearing everywhere else up to now. Coffee continues to be a fascinating, passionate, and delicious product, which is very uncertain right now. So thank you for everyone that tries to bring a level of seeing what stability we can bring in this very delicate balance of a situation we're in. So, muchas gracias, Merling. Obrigada, Paulo.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias a todos por participar.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.